on from that. That was kind of impromptu, but we'll
Like
move
it.
on from that to the season finale, potentially series finale, and season review of Marvel's Moon Knight. Excuse me, the sixth and final episode of Moon Knight, which was also its shortest, I believe. Sees Arthur Harrow unlock Amit, the Gator Goddess. I guess it's probably a crocodile because
Yeah.
Crocodile. They began to purify Cairo, but before she could move on to bigger things, Layla frees Khonshu and becomes the avatar of Taweret, the Scarlet Scarab. A lot of resemblance to Wonder Woman, the MCU's, the Scarlet Scarab, the MCU's first Egyptian superhero. Mark goes back for Steven in the underworld. The pair escape just in time for a menage a trois of pain against Arthur Harrow. Moon Knight and Mr. Knight, as well as the Scarab, fight valiantly, but appear at the end of the line until Mark blacks out. And when he comes to, that threw me off.
The tables have turned.
The tables have turned, and dramatically so. Layla and Mark cast a spell binding Amit to Harrow's body, and Mark and Steven give up their Moon Knight, Mr. Knight powers and wind up back in jolly England, enjoying a life of double retirement. So before we get into, our thoughts on the series as a whole, the end credits, all of that, what were your thoughts on just this episode?
It was weird how short it was.
Yeah.
I thought it was weird. Like that threw me. Like it was almost like too short, where like they really tried wrapping it up too much. And like, as much as I like this series, this episode to me felt a little flat, and because they tried to make everything happen all at once.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Maybe I was wrong. Like, I've been not, feeling 100%, maybe or something like that. But to me, it was just, here's everything. And then, and not to get into the end credits or anything like that, but it was just like, here he is. He's given up Moon Knight and that's it. And like, that was kind of it. And it was like, okay. Like we had such like the last two episodes, both you and I were just like, those were so good. Especially the fifth episode, the penultimate episode was, I think we both agreed, the best episode of Marvel Studios television.
Yeah, I'll get into that.
Yeah,
I have a thought on that when we get to the series as a whole.
It was at least very, very high episode.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that's the one thing we'll both say on that end. And it was so weird how this didn't really feel up to par on that end of things. It was, to me, it felt very disjointed and rushed.
Yeah.
It doesn't, I will say, the thing I'll say, and we'll get into it more, it didn't necessarily take away from my like overall series thing of it. I'm not one of these people like, you're only as good as your last like episode, because there's a lot of season finales don't live up to the rest of the season. But it was weird when it ended. I remember like, I literally is like, when it ended, I was like, I looked over at James like, that was it.
Yeah.
And then it was it, and except for the end credits. But like, so for me, it was like, episode, and it might have been the weakest episode, honestly, of the entire season. I've only watched every episode once, so it's hard to like fully break that down, but that's where I'm at with that.
I think Marvel has an ending problem with these shows. Like they don't know how to end. They don't know how to stick the landing with the shows, because the ending, the fifth episode or whatever the next last episode, always seems super strong.
Yeah.
And then the ending episodes have been really hit or miss.
Yeah.
I thought, like you said, it was very short, and I thought it was a really weird decision given how short the episode was to leave Oscar Isaac on the sideline so long, because he didn't show up until about 14 and a half minutes into the episode that was really only probably about 38 minutes long.
Right.
So 43-minute runtime with credits. So, and the credits are usually like 5 minutes or so. So that was weird. They did try to do everything at once, and I do think that they did a good job of not overemphasizing the battle between Amit, if I'm saying that correctly, and Khonshu as the big like big gods, because I think that
Right.
that was one of the things that really hurt Shang-Chi was the big CGI finish. And I
Right.
thought that they showed you just enough that it wasn't too much of that particular battle. I overall, I think it's hard to really rate this because it was so short and it ended so fast. Worst episode, I don't know. Weakest maybe is a better word, but
Yeah.
we knew we were going to get more action. I enjoyed in the final action set piece the back and forth between Moon Knight and Mr. Knight. And
Yeah.
I don't know why it stuck with me. In particular, the one sequence where he like pops Harrow and he's Mr. Knight and he like straightens the jacket.
Mhm.
Like for some reason that looked really cool to me.
It was cool.
Yeah.
That's why I loved it. It was cool.
Yeah. What did you think about Layla and the Scarlet Scarab? Very reminiscent of Wonder Woman in a lot of ways.
I was just gonna say, it's like, like we said with Moon Knight and other things in Marvel Universe, a lot of these things no one's ever read, no one's ever heard of, and then when you see it, it's like, oh, this reminds me of something else, and this happens to be, maybe the third most famous character in the DC universe,
Right.
and that's just sort of funny to me, and it's like that's because I didn't know a lot about that character. Honestly, I'm just like, I'm well versed in the Marvel universe, despite what people may say about me online.
What does that mean?
I've had a lot of people come at me when I comment on like Nerdist posts when they talk about the multiverse. And I'm like, this multiverse thing is stupid. Like, because Nerdist always promotes, is this the multiverse? Even though we've never really got that far into it. And I'm like, I'm so tired. It's me complaining about Nerdist more than it is complaining about Marvel. It's like, quit trying to make it happen, Nerdist. Like, quit trying it. Like, you're wrong.
It's happening.
What I mean, though, is they are always wrong. Like, we're more right than the Nerdist, where they're getting paid, people are getting paid paychecks to make wrong statements, and we're just showing up.
Yeah.
The Nerdist is like the worst at this. Come at me, Nerdist, because you're the worst. Like, you are the worst at predicting anything, Nerdist. Like, you are literally the worst.
Shots fired.
Yeah, shots 100% fired at Nerdist. You guys suck. Like, I will 100% say they suck at this Marvel stuff. Like, they're so bad at it. Like, we joke around about how bad we are. We would be fucking top of the food chain at the Nerdist, Britain. It's like insane to me. It's so bad. And like, I comment on it, and you get these losers that have probably read 10 comic books their entire life. It's like, I used to get 25 comic books a year for Christmas and like backlogs. So like, I've read these fucking comic books, morons. And like, I didn't read Moon Knight because literally no one's read Moon Knight. And so when this character shows up, and I'm like, this is Wonder Woman, like you said, it's just like kind of funny to me. It didn't do a lot for me because, like you said, like Oscar Isaac wasn't in this episode. Like, it was so weird to me. And it's like, it's called Moon Knight. He's Moon Knight, like he's and it was just like, it just wasn't. It didn't work for me. This whole episode was just so, in a way, it was kind of boring because there wasn't that like 4 and 5 energy of like dissecting the brain and all this stuff. It was like, all this has been pushed aside essentially, and he's okay now. And it's like, that's.
So let's get into, I guess, the end credits kind of addresses that specifically with him and his sort of blackout. As I do think that they handled this very well.
Yes.
When he blacks out in the final fight, and then all of a sudden, he's down for the count, and Layla is pinned to the car, and then all of a sudden we do the blackout thing, and then everybody's dead now. And I thought that they did a really good job of showing restraint.
Yeah.
In that they could have well shown that, like what ends up happening. And this is the end credits. So spoilers, if you haven't seen the end credits or you haven't seen the episode yet, please don't listen to the next part. But we learn in the end credits, Arthur, with Amit trapped in him, he's in like a psych ward, it seems like, and he gets pushed out by, I was expecting this to be the MCU connection.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
And then he gets kind of dumped into this car, and Khonshu's there, and it's like a limo, and he puts down the intermediate screen, and it's Oscar Isaac, and he's speaking Spanish, and he just shoots him. And we learn that it is the third personality, which we've been kind of discussing throughout, and a personality by the name of Jake Lockley. So I did think that they did a good job of showing the restraint to leave that until the end credit. Now we've discussed at length that, and I guess this kind of gets into, maybe predictions or what have you, but where does this leave us in terms of, we know Oscar Isaac doesn't have a contract with Marvel moving forward from this. And, it certainly seems as though this is setting up a season 2, but where, if they're not able to come to terms, then, it's just kind of bunk, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, there's a thing where it could be just bunk, and it is what it is. And I think they did this intentionally because, let's say he doesn't resign, then there was no connection to the Marvel universe anyhow. Sure. So doesn't really matter.
Right.
There's nothing connecting you to anything. And so, but if he does, then we can play off of this. And I think eventually, probably season 2 does lead us into the Marvel universe. I just feel like eventually you have to do it, whether we want to see it or not. And I think you and I are both kind of like, we like to stand alone and not being a part of it. Yeah. Because this, for the most part, this season really worked as that. And we kept being excited that they didn't connect to it. And when I saw that they were doing it in end credits, and the reason, the good thing about watching things on Disney Plus is if there's an end credits, they keep rolling it and they don't shrink the screen. Right. And so, there's an end credits. And so I was like, oh, here we go. We're going to get whatever, I honestly thought it was going to be a Doctor Strange thing because the movie comes out Friday or today, it comes out today or tonight, Thursday, when we're recording, it does come out in some theaters. Right. And so I was expecting that, and it wasn't that. And then, it's the third personality because, he obviously has some issues. And then we go. And so to me, the way they ended it was very cool because it's we don't sign this contract. This is just kind of up in the air, and you can think of whatever you want. And then if it does, then we have this storyline. And at least it makes sense.
Work from.
At the very least.
There were 2 cameos cut from the show, and the director did not say what they were. He said it was in the first scene of the show and the last scene of the show. So I think that the end credits were probably not originally what the end credits were.
Right. Yeah.
As they were scripting this out. And he did say, we don't need this. And he also said that the biggest compliment that they could give this show is that it doesn't feel like a Marvel show. So with that being said, let's get into thoughts on the full 6-episode arc, whether it be the series, whether it be season 1. Overall thoughts.
I really like it. It like I said, the 6th episode doesn't make me dislike it any more or less. It really doesn't. It was just because those 4 and 5 episodes were super, super strong. Mm-hmm. I still I loved Hawkeye.
Right.
I thought that from beginning to end was, and nothing's ever perfect, but that was a really nice episode of a character that is popular, but not Captain America and not Iron Man. And that show really worked for me and is probably still my favorite. And there's probably part of that where it's just oh, I know this character, stuff like that.
True.
This show is to me right now, watching every episode just once, and Hawkeye I just watched once too. And most of the other ones, I think I just watched once. I think I ever just watched everything just once, actually, now thinking back. What I liked about the show, so different and such a reach in a good way for Marvel to go away from what they were trying to do with other things and to place it right before Doctor Strange and not have it have anything to do with Doctor Strange was very cool because I know, I don't know how many other people were expecting something, but I was definitely expecting some sort of Doctor Strange thing where it's if you're in the Marvel universe, you're in it, you're seeing it this weekend after you watch Moon Knight. And I thought this was a calculated risk.
Sure.
Because it's TV. So you can do different things with TV than you can with movies. Mm-hmm. And also, if this doesn't work, Oscar Isaac doesn't have another season anyhow. So, whatever. And we just move on. And it's it never happened. Because a year from now, we're going to have 3 movies or 4 movies and 4 TV shows, and
At least.
nobody will even remember Moon Knight existed. One of those kind of things is kind of the way this works. And so to me, it was like to me at the time it came out and the way they did it was kind of a perfect move for Marvel Studios.
Sure. I think that this was the best show of all the shows, but Hawkeye was the best MCU show.
Sure. Yeah.
And I think that, so to differentiate, this did not feel like a Marvel show throughout. How much do you think Moon Knight or Mr. Knight, even for that matter, was on screen? It couldn't have been more than 10 minutes.
Right.
Throughout.
Superpowers were very lay in
like
the background.
Vague. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so obviously we get the last episode where you're going to have a little bit more than that. But I mean, episode 4 and 5, there was very little. And, 5, there wasn't any. There was barely any in 1, barely any in 2. 3 had quite a bit. But I would say all told, if you look at it, couldn't have been more than 15 minutes.
No.
And this was a story of a man who's mentally broken. And I'm excited to see if they do a season 2, how this other personality fits into that.
Right.
And so I think from that standpoint, and obviously we've talked at length about Oscar Isaac and the job that he did in this show. Very talented actor. One of the most underrated actors in all of Hollywood, in my opinion. And this was a lot for him to chew on. I thought Ethan Hawke was great. I thought that the other supporting characters, it was so minimal. There's really only 3 characters in this of consequence, because you have Layla, you have Mark and Steven, and which I guess you could say are 2 different characters. And then Arthur, and everybody other than them is just background. And so I think that, like you said, this was a risky move, especially in between Spider-Man and Doctor Strange. And everyone's looking for how it connects to everything else, and there are no connections. But I think that they might be onto something here with maybe trying to step out of this. If you think about it, this is the first Marvel movie or show that has not pushed universe building literally since the first Iron Man.
Yep.
So, what are we looking at? 14 years or something like that? Everything has had everything aside from Iron Man and Moon Knight have had something to push the franchise as a whole a little bit further. And this story being told in an isolated way, in its own, it just tells the story, and it does so very well. I agree with you that the last episode was kind of a letdown, but overall I thought the series was great. And I would say, again, of all the Disney Plus shows, I mean, hell, you had world building in What If. It's a cartoon. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So this has been the best show, period. But Hawkeye, for what it is, better MCU show.
Yeah.
I would say WandaVision 2, probably better MCU show. Yeah,
I would say better MCU show for both of those, but this is a better television show.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's my opinion.
This is a show that you could show someone that's never watched a Marvel movie, and I'd be shocked if they disliked it.
Right.
It might not be their absolute jam, but they would at least be like, this is fine.
I mean, if this is like the genre that they're into. But so out of 10 for the series,
I give it an 8, just a flat 8.
Yeah, I think I'm good. I'm good with that. 8. Yeah. That last episode was kind of a buzzkill.
I have, this is weird because obviously this is saying like something that directly connects, but it actually made me more excited for She-Hulk, and I was pretty excited about She-Hulk. But like, I love the idea of like courtroom drama.
Sure.
And like them doing that, I think, and then connecting it back. Obviously, it'll be connected back to the MCU. There's just no way you can't.
Right.
It made me excited because just the storytelling of that will probably be pretty good. I'll be shocked if it isn't.
Yeah, we'll see. We're really hoping, Moon Knight season 2.
Yeah.
Hoping it happens.